Hello there, people of the internet. This is a 20-round magazine for any YouTube reviewers that are watching. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the AK platform and how it came to be. This right here is another video in a set of a video series that I'm doing in an attempt to make it to 100,000 subscribers. I'm going through the history, development, and fundamental technologies behind every single one of the firearms that I have inside of my collection. So if you want to be a part of that, subscribe. Hopefully this video earns your subscription if you're not subscribed already. And if not, then, well, hopefully I'll get you guys on the next one because I plan on uploading one of these every single day, or at least I'm going to try my absolute best. So that being said, let's talk about the AK platform. So I guess to begin on this, we got to go ahead and go back to the very origins as to why this right here was made. During the Second World War, whenever countries were running around using full power rifles against one another, like for example this Mosin Nagant in 7.62x54 rimmed, this is an 1891 pattern. Whenever countries were going around using those full-power bolt-action rifles against one another, it was very, very clear during that time period that self-loading rifles were absolutely going to be the way of the future and absolutely going to be where countries needed to go for their future firearms development. Now, during this same time period, it was also seen that intermediate cartridges were going to be something that was absolutely necessary to compete with other countries that were using intermediate cartridges. So during the Second World War, it was very much noted that long, heavy, cumbersome rifles, bolt-action rifles that were unable to put down a lot of lead down range were not exactly ideal, especially when those guys came across and came up against people who were armed with self-loading rifles. Not only that, but combat was taking place at far shorter distances than what was actually expected for combat to take place at. Originally, whenever the development of these bolt-action rifles were taking place, it was right as smokeless powder came to be. So it was assumed that combat was going to be taking place with this new smokeless powder, launching projectiles far distances, far greater distances than black powder was ever able to. It was just assumed that combat was going to take place at farther distances because they had the capability to do so. When in reality, most of your combat was taking place within 300 yards and in. So as a result, having this large, heavy, full power rifle cartridge was simply not necessary. Whenever soldiers could carry a smaller, lighter weight, lighter recoiling cartridge, they could carry more ammunition because the cartridges weighed less, and I imagine that the cartridges were also less expensive to make because they take literally less material. So in this particular case, we got the 7.62x39, which started development in 1943 for the SKS platform. This is a self-loading, semi-automatic 10-round capacity rifle. However, as time progressed after the Second World War, Russia was wanting to basically replace all of their rifles and SMGs with the same kind of select fire rifle in an intermediate cartridge, so it could be used as an SMG if it needed to be, or it could be used as a infantry rifle for accurate long-range shots if that needed to be. Now, of course, intermediate cartridges, these are not going to be intended for real long distances. The AK was intended for 400 yards and in. Of course, you can send these, or send 7.62x39 projectiles out at farther ranges than that. These are 123 grain projectiles. They're going to be traveling at about 2,500 feet per second, depending on your barrel length, and there should be adequate enough to be able to handle basically whatever it is that you come across. So after World War II, Kalashnikov, the inventor of the rifle, gained a lot of inspiration for both the M1 Garand systems, or Garand, however it is that you want to pronounce that, and the STG Sturmgewehr 44, chambered in 8mm Kurz. The idea of the intermediate cartridge and external magazine was copied from the STG 44, along with the pistol grip and the general style of the rifle. However, inside of the rifle, we have a piston-driven system and a rotating bolt locking system that is very reminiscent of the M1 Garand. As a matter of fact, on the back of the receiver right here, there's this huge cutout where the charging handle slides in and out of upon the reciprocation of firing the rifle. That right there can also be found on the M1 Garand system. Right, here's your safety. This is a very simple safety, but what it does is it actually covers up that hole to act as a dust cover to stop any kind of funk, dirt, or debris from getting inside of your rifle. These are very, very simple rifles. I believe that there's only 8 parts that move inside of this rifle upon firing, so that right there gives way to being an incredibly simple design. Whenever Russia first started trying to produce the AK platform, they were attempting to produce it as a stamped receiver platform, so they could produce a lot of them very quickly and very cheaply. It was just a very economic way to do these things. With it being a stamped receiver, you don't need a whole lot of mass inside of your receiver if your load-bearing part is not a part of that receiver. In this case, for the AK, the load-bearing part is this front trunnion and barrel, and of course the bolts that is actually locking up the system. The front trunnion and the barrel here will be the load-bearing parts, and those are separate from the receiver, so as a result you can have a nice thin sheet metal receiver because there's no pressures inside of that receiver. But Russia had issues with their stamped sheet metal receivers. They had issues with, oh God, what is that? Get off of me. Sorry guys, Florida decided to attack me for a second here. They had issues with their stamped sheet metal receivers, just the quality control was not that good, and the original AK-47 designs were not very strong. We'll go ahead and we'll look inside of the receiver, and I'll show you guys a reinforcing bar that was put inside of the AK receiver after the original development, the original run of the AK platform. So the first run of stamped AKs did not work out for Russia, so in order for them to get better at their stamping procedures, they needed to buy time, but they also still needed to produce rifles, so they did actually make a lot of milled receiver AKs during that time period while they were trying to work on their stamped metal capabilities. Eventually, the stamped metal capabilities did increase to the point to where they could reliably make receivers that were not of dubious quality, and so as a result, they moved along to a stamped sheet metal AK receiver, and that right there is what we still use to this day, with the exception of people who decide to go out of their way to get themselves a milled receiver AK. So now, all of that being said, the AK, although yes produced by Russia, is produced by a dramatic amount of variety of people all around the world. It is a very simple system, very easy to produce system, 7.62x39, very powerful cartridge. Of course, they do make these in 5.45 as well, but they also make them in other cartridges. If you bump this up to like the PSL style rifles, and that's 7.62x54 rimmed, they do make 7.62x51 NATO AKs, so there's just a variety of different kinds of AKs out there that you can get, but the original cartridge in 7.62x39 is by far the most prolific. So all of that out of the way, this right here is a stamped receiver AK. We're going to go ahead and send a couple of rounds downrange through this AK. I'll show you guys how to actually operate it and how it works, and we'll talk about how it feels to actually fire. The design of the sights is reminiscent of previous designs. It's just a leaf sight. This particular one has a windage adjustment on it, but it's a leaf sight and a front post inside of a rounded sight protector on the front of the rifle. And this right here is literally just like all of the previous generations of Russian firearms. Just like the SKS and the Mosin Nagant series that came before that, it's a very simple leaf sight that you use for adjusting elevation. Okay, well, let's go ahead. I've got a mag. This is a partially loaded mag. I think I have, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 rounds inside of that thing. I got earmuffs. Let's go ahead, load this up, and send some lead. Alright, so I've got my AK platform here. The original AKs did not have a front sight that was attached to the gas block as well. The front sight and the gas block of the original AK style was different. This one also does not have a bayonet lug on it. This is very much just a sporting rifle. So that being said, right here's our safety. You cannot charge the firearm if it is unsafe. You have to swap it to fire. So if you want to clear your firearm, it has to be unsafe, and that is just something that I do not personally like about the AK platform. Rock and Lock magazine, if you're familiar with the M14 style of magazine system, then this right here should feel right at home. Literally just nose in, rock back, magazine is in. This particular one fits very, very nicely inside of this AK platform. There's both polymer and steel mags out there that you can get. Polymer is nice and lightweight, steel mags nice and durable, but they are going to be heavier, and the steel mags tend to wobble around a little bit, whereas the polymer mags tend to be a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more stable. They don't have any wobble behind them. On this side of the AK, you'll see a little mounting system right here that you can throw an AK mount onto, and that there will allow you to have a rail system above the receiver that you can throw a red dot or a scope or whatever it is that you want on there. You can't throw a red dot or rail onto this receiver because the receiver is just sheet metal that is held on with spring tension, and it wobbles around, and it does not give a good stable mounting platform if you want to mount any sort of real system on it. This is a piston operated system, which I will show you guys here whenever we disassemble the rifle after firing. So that being said, let's go ahead, send a couple of rounds downrange. I have no idea how many rounds I actually have inside of this thing, but I imagine that we're going to find out. I just have my steel target down there. So let's send some lead. Can you guys see? I don't know. This GoPro doesn't have a screen on it, so I just kind of assume that you guys can see where it is that I'm firing. I got a big rubber butt pad on this thing to help with recoil absorption. 7.62 by 39 doesn't recoil a whole lot, but it also gives me a 1-inch extension. I'm a pretty tall dude. I'm just over 6 feet tall, so yeah, that extension definitely helps. Okay, well, we had ourselves some pretty fast follow-up shots there. Apparently I had 10 rounds inside of that magazine. So, fast follow-up shots, as you would expect from 7.62 by 39, with it not being a full power rifle cartridge, the recoil on it really not all that intense, and so as a result you can manage to lay down some pretty good accurate fire, especially if you're firing at close distances like what we are at. I missed one round. That was on me. I'm not exactly the most accurate shooter, not exactly the most competent shooter, but with this rubber butt pad and the recoil being absorbed all that much more, this right here is definitely a very easy platform to fire. The recoil is not, well, I mean, it is bigger than the recoil of, say, a 5.56, so you are going to notice more if you get around to shooting it. Get off of me, you. I don't know what that was, but it was colorful. Don't you just love the state of Florida? But the recoil is definitely more noticeable than something like 5.56, so if you are recoil sensitive, then that might not necessarily be something that you would want to go for. However, these are dramatically more powerful than 5.56. Shot per shot, the energy put onto target is significantly more. 5.56, 223, that is a 55 or 62 grain projectile on normal. And this right here is more of a 123 grain on normal. So now that we have all that out of the way, let's go ahead and set this down, disassemble it, take it apart, have a look at the inside. I'll show you all how it works, and hopefully the history and the firing and the disassembly and whatnot of this video will be enough to earn y'all subscription. If not, then I'll have to try again on the next video, because like I said, I plan on doing this every day. Oh, look at that. It's one of those Florida lizards. Haha, that's cool. There's good fish bait. You want to see a Florida lizard? Hey, look at him go. Oh, he don't look very happy. He will bite you, but their bites don't hurt at all. Come on, buddy. What, you're not going to bite me? He just bit me whenever I picked him up. Oh, well. But there you go, Florida lizard. Where are you going? No, you're not. He's trying to get away. Okay, well, I'm going to go let him go. I'm not going to use him as fish bait because I don't plan on fishing. Let's take apart that AK. I always found it weird that whenever you catch these guys, they just, like, completely give up on everything. And they'll be like, hey, I'm trying to get away. Like, right now, he's like, I'm trying to run right now. And then if you see him, he'll start, like, relaxing and falling asleep. Maybe it's because I'm warm or something. But he'll just, like, completely give up and go numb. And he's like, all right, I'm done. That's enough for me. To the point where I can just, like, open his mouth and whatnot. He'll just be chilling, hanging out. And then he'll try and get away again. And that's how all of these lizards are. I do not know why. See, look, eyes closed. He's going to bed. There he goes. I can feel him relaxing now. Alright, so for those of you uncultured swine who do not know how to take apart an AK, we're going to go ahead and talk about that now. So, magazine, out of the way, firearm, already checked for clear. Let's go ahead, press this button on the back. This right here will lift up the top cover on the back of the receiver here. Can be a little tricky to get off, but there we go. There's our top cover. It's literally just stamped sheet metal. Much like our SKS, this right here is top cover that comes off the back. Here is our... oh goodness, what is that? Get away from me. Here's our bug flying around. There's always something bothering me out here. Here's our recoil spring. Lift this forward and up, and it just comes right out of the rifle. Very reminiscent to the SKS that we were just taking apart on the last video. And then our bolt carrier group and bolt come backwards and lift up out of the rifle as well, just like with the SKS platform. Unlike the SKS is a tilt locking system, and this right here has an actual rotating bolt on it. So the bolt for this rotates inside of this camming system based on the position that this is going to be in. Inside of the receiver, there is something crawling on my camera. It is a grasshopper, large and green. My goodness, hi buddy. What are you trying to do? Let's see if I can get it on my finger. There we go. Look at that. That's a grasshopper right there. That would be good fish bait. That's good fish bait right there. You're going to need the grasshopper for your AK disassembly. Absolutely essential. Well, okay, well, let's go ahead and just stop with the bullshit now. So tilting, or not tilting, a rotating bolt system. You got your actual locking lugs on the system here. And this right here is what replaced, well, This right here is the system that replaced the SKS in Russian service. So although it is very similar to the SKS in a lot of regards for disassembly, there are a couple of differences. The SKS has a lever, and this right here has a push button that you push to get the top cover off. But besides that, these both pull up, lift out. The actual operating systems are different. This right here has a full-sized piston on it versus that right there, which is a short-stroke piston. This right here, the whole piston, this is a long-stroke system. The whole piston and bolt carrier group move as the entire bolt and whatnot reciprocates, versus the SKS, where the piston just moves out a couple of millimeters from the retaining area that the little short stroke piston is in. It moves out just a couple of millimeters to unlock the bolt carrier group, and then the recoil and whatnot will open it up the rest of the way. So for the AK, the gas system, this one we can actually get into pretty damn comfortably. There's this little lever right here. Just kind of lift that up just like this, and at some position, this right here lifts off. This is your gas tube, I guess is what I would call this. With the upper handguard on it, and this right here is what you would do to clean out any kind of corrosive ammunition that maybe you might have fired. You got your gas block full open right there, so you could get into that very easy, and you got this piece of the gas system fully open, so you can get into that really easily. So very, very simple rifle, and very, very easy to get into and maintain and disassemble. And there's not a whole lot of small parts that you could lose. No pins or screws or delicate little things that could get lost like that, not unless you're going to do some intricate work, like inside of the bolt right here. We have a couple of pins for our extractor and for the firing pin itself. If you take those out, those are pretty small. Those could get lost, but I don't foresee foot soldiers taking those out, especially for an AK. That's something for like an armorer to do back at the base. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. I do appreciate your time. Hopefully you guys learned something, and hopefully I earned y'all's subscription. That being said, I don't have a whole lot more to say about the AK platform. I think we've pretty much covered everything with this thing. So I'm going to say, hey, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Description below. Link to all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and go check that out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you guys on the next episode. We'll go ahead and show off the fire control group for the AK. Here is something. This right here is the actual reinforcing. What would I call that? Reinforcing rod? We're going to call it a reinforcing rod for lack of a better term. This right here is a little rod that was put into the AK receiver to reinforce it. That's something that the Russians did whenever they redid their milling to stamp AK receivers to strengthen the receiver. So that right there makes the receiver a little bit stronger, so it's not just this open sheet metal receiver that can bend very, very easily. So right here's our fire control group. Right here is our hammer. Pull the trigger, it goes forward. Very simple system. Whenever it comes back, it catches on a sear catch there. If you're holding the trigger down, it catches on a second sear catch, and it will not release until you let go of that trigger. It pops up to the primary sear catch, and then you can pull the trigger again, and it launches the hammer forward, and that right there strikes the firing pin and sends a round downrange. So, hopefully you guys learned something on this. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all on the next episode.
Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.